Hey, Charlie, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Anissa, thanks for having me. Always good to be back.
So what's happening with Bitcoin right now?
Well, it's tempting to say a whole lot of nothing because the markets haven't been very volatile. But I think under the surface, it's really quite an interesting setup trading-wise. So why don't we dig in? Okay, so here's our first chart. Really a remarkable chart. So this is realized volatility of Bitcoin since January. The white line is the shortest dated measure of realized volatility, and then the other ones are kind of different moving averages. And what you can see is that volatility in the market is actually lower than it was pre-COVID. It's just completely compressed, and down to like a 15-day, a 10%, over the last 10 days, 15%, move, which is just unheard of as a low annualized volatility for Bitcoin. On the next page here, we can see that the low volatility is persistent across the whole market, but it's really, most noticeable in Bitcoin itself. And Ethereum has been outperforming. In the yellow line here, you've got the Ethereum versus Bitcoin cross, and you can see that ETH is moving up. People are excited about DeFi. They're excited about ETH 2.0, but Bitcoin is just steady as she goes. So moving on here. There's still this kind of idea out there that Bitcoin is digital gold, but actual gold and actual silver, which are in the yellow and green lines respectively on this next slide, are really outperforming in recent months versus Bitcoin, and that kind of draws into question this idea of Bitcoin is this sort of like macro hedge, the super hard asset kind of only thing. It's like maybe it's not trading like that right now, and there's different theories about why that might be. Maybe we're still working off a kind of a post-halvening over positioning. Maybe it's something else that's going on in terms of too many people writing options or who knows what. But it's really quite remarkable, especially in the context of a macro environment that's heavily favoring precious metals right now.
Right, and favoring them. What does that imply about the dollar?
Well, we'll get there in just 2 seconds. I just wanted to highlight on the next slide. With the recent spike in precious metals over the last couple of days, the institutional crossover folks have not given up at all, and they're positioning up in Bitcoin futures on the CME again. So that's sort of indicating kind of like no capitulation by macro folks kind of crossing over into Bitcoin. And then if you look at the dollar chart, which is the next one, here we have in yellow the inverse of the dollar. So higher means the dollar is weaker. And we can see as the dollar is weakening, and that tends to pull Bitcoin higher, but it hasn't happened over the last month. So that's really pretty notable, and I do think it will, put some kind of gravitational attraction to the top side in, would be my opinion. But it's just an opinion, as I say.
Okay.
So, yeah. Right now, in terms of the overall kind of macro environment, global growth expectations are starting to re-rate higher again. The EU managed to get a stimulus package put together, which the markets are interpreting quite bullishly, and parts of Asia appear to be bouncing in terms of economic activity. And what that's done is push the price of copper higher against the price of gold, and thereby reduce the gold-copper ratio. So if you think that global growth is going to pick up, it raises the question of, in the context of all this stimulus, with growth picking up, does that mean inflation might pick up again? And so what we have here on the next page is a chart of the silver price against swap implied inflation rates. And what it shows is that silver may be leading the inflation market higher. It's a much smaller market than the bond market, and therefore it's easier to move around. So definitely keep an eye on the space. If this rally in silver is persistent, it will tend to push up inflation expectations, or could be signaling rather that there is an uptick in inflation expectations, which if the macro story on crypto holds, should pass over into Bitcoin. Now, kind of related to that, just moving on to the technicals. Right now, it's been so slow in Bitcoin that kind of in terms of the longer dated technical chart, kind of the nearby really big levels are kind of in that like 9,000 area and 10,300 to the top side. So we're still kind of at the bottom of like where kind of the nearest anchor points are from a longer term technical perspective. And I would look for Bitcoin to fill in that gap pretty meaningfully to the top side.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, Nisa.